Good morning, class. Just a few brief remarks on your reading for today, which was page 195 to 210. Really hard chapter to read once more. As I said, I hope you're not reading these right before bed, but that you're giving them some time to process sometime during the morning or the daytime. We're back on the journey. So she has been at the Baye. After the raid, she was moved to Scheveningen, the prison. After that, she was moved to Vught, which was work the work camp that was located still within Holland, but run by Germans, which was more harsh than the last place. And now they have suddenly had to move again further into the heart of Germany, now into the heart of Germany, at this new place called Ravensbruck. And it's her nightmare. She was praying that this wouldn't happen, that she would go into this camp. She's heard stories of Ravensbruck from other people back in Haarlem, and she knew that this is what you would call an extermination camp. Now, that's not the official name for these places, because the official name was a concentration camp. And concentrate basically means to stream together, right, from many different places. The Germans had this mission to round up all the Jews in Europe and basically concentrate them within their camps and work them to death. That's why Corrie sees through this terminology and she says extermination camp. That's what you mean, a death camp, because that's really what the function of these camps were. After they would concentrate all the people, they would first work them extremely hard and under extremely poor conditions. They would have absurdly strict rules that were twisted and morally corrupt, so that even if you wished to work to your best of your ability, you would be demoralized and you would slip here or there, and then you would be punished instantly by death. And when you see that punishment happening, then it demoralizes, meaning demotivates or moves the people around them, not just the person being punished, but everybody else who's witnessing this, moves them into despair because they realize that they're living on the edge each day. And so this whole machine is driven by fear. Anyways, after they've worked them really hard, they're either going to die of the work conditions just from exhaustion, or they'll be simply lined up and shot, executed, as we saw in the last chapter, so that they can make room for more prisoners to come in. They're realizing that they don't have the capacity to actually house so many people. And so they simply exterminate them, which is about the most inhumane thing you could do. And this has become a whole system, not just a murderer, not just one person, but a whole body of people working together in this production of evil. Now, when we get to the specifics of Corrie's faith is central in this chapter, and the gospel that she has is almost its own character. Let's go to the beginning of this chapter. Page 201, we have Corrie saying in her own writing, God's good news. Was it to this world that he had spoken it? She asks you a rhetorical question, which is interesting from the narrator's point of view. She's looking at that Bible, the one thing that she has left, right? And she says, this is supposed to be the good news. This is supposed to be our hope for the world. Was it for this world? Because it doesn't look like it to me. Because I'm seeing death all around me. I'm seeing suffering inflicted by other humans that have seemed to completely have lost all of their human connection. And it's happening a lot. So that's enough to make her start at least having some doubts about the faith that she has professed for 50 years. She has to rethink things, right? And one of the perks of this, I don't even want to use the word perks, but one of the little details of this story that is extremely important for how Corrie gets through is her sister Betsy. And Betsy's unbelievably strong pain tolerance and unbelievably strong vision for how God can work through the darkest places in our lives. And so the two of them become extremely close. They hold on to that Bible as well. They're going to go through a few obstacles at the beginning, where it seems that the Bible will be confiscated, right? First is the shower situation, where they have to strip down right in front of the guards. They get around this by kind of going off to the bathroom, sticking the Bible under a bench, going through the shower, and then coming to pick it up on their way out. And they get checked by the guards on their way out too, right? Except they check Betsy and they check the person behind Corrie, but not Corrie herself. Therefore, the Bible is safe and they're able to continue on to the barracks and keep that scripture in their life. Another part about that I wanted to bring up was nakedness is actually a big part of this chapter as well. So there's the humiliation of not just changing, but completely letting go of your clothes in front of these guards. Sometimes they're female guards, but there's also male guards here that are simply there. It's happening in front of them. And they also, we have, they're also stripped down for their medical exams, which might strike you as odd that they even have medical exams, right? And it adds to this kind of absurdity of in former chapters about how on the outside everything is so well documented, right? Everything's perfectly efficient and there's triple checks about who's who and who's where. And the Nazis on the outside have this very clinical look to it. And what's so twisted is that all of this paperwork is facilitating these evil systems. So when they have to strip down for all of these ridiculous exams, Corrie actually has a insight that she had never thought of before. She thinks of the crucifixion, right? And how in all those paintings of Jesus on the cross, there's at least that the cloth around a part of his body to keep it from being completely naked on the cross. And she says that cloth wasn't there. Christ was completely naked, and it wasn't for an artistic goal. It wasn't because it was artistically beautiful and out of reverence. No, he was naked because people had ripped his clothes off and gambled his clothes away. That's what it says in the Gospels. And he was humiliated and beaten and spat upon, and people would look up at him on the cross and mock him and call him King of the Jews, right? And she says, this is what Christ was feeling. There wasn't a safety net, right? There wasn't that little cloth that they show in the paintings. Just as in the same way that Corrie and Betsy, there's nothing between them and the guards. She's completely vulnerable, and she knows that they're going to abuse her and that she's oppressed by them, and that they have power over her. And so that is a really sick feeling that she has to endure. But that also allows her to open up her eyes and see how Christ also had to endure that same suffering, and Christ was going to go through this with her, and Christ had gone before her and led the way. And that is one of the ways that she has hope, right? And so Betsy and her start to radically reimagine what this time in Ravensbruck can be. And that's not to say that she isn't overwhelmed. Of course she's overwhelmed. She's located next to the punishment barracks. So there's the barracks, which are awful, the normal place that they are. They're in an extermination camp. And then there's the punishment barracks for when someone breaks their ridiculous rules. And they overhear what's going on in this punishment barracks, and it's not pretty. There's a lot of screaming happening, and she says it's not a human type scream. It's as if humans are becoming animals, both the people that are persecuting and the people that are being persecuted. And this whole thing is inhumane. Anyways, that's the context of their life in Ravensbruck. That's what's going on around them. Yet, within that, Betsy and Corrie together start to reimagine, like I said, radically, what this time can be. Betsy leads the way in this, and she says, we were made for this, Corrie. We have a mission. We have the good news to give to these suffering women that are in our barracks. And so we got to start praying. We got to start having worship time. She leads them in hymns, we see in this chapter. And we got to start reading the scriptures in a whole new way to the people around us in community. And just to comment, I'm not trying to neglect the fact that they are in the worst situation possible. They are in these barracks that have lice and fleas. They had to sleep in the mud for 2 days before they even got there. And the fleas are going around, so they cut off their hair, which is another sign of just a lack of dignity in this place, where they're completely reduced to animals. And yet we see their testimony through that. And Betsy says, we got to give thanks for this. We got to give thanks in all circumstances. One of the reasons I want to focus a lot on the scriptures part of this is because the reason that these scriptures are coming alive to Betsy and Corrie, and perhaps in your own eyes as a reader, is because the scriptures, the Bible, was written by people in situations something like this. Yes, I'll say that again. The people that wrote the Bible, the authors, were enduring suffering of some relation to the type that Corrie is dealing with in this book. That is, whether it's the Exodus in the Old Testament, you have a group of slaves, and God hears the cry of the slaves, and he says, I'm going to take you out of Egypt because I have heard your cry, and I have listened to your mediator, Moses, and I will save you. I will be your God, and you will be my people, my treasured nation. And then it could be later on in the Old Testament when all of a sudden the chosen nation is in exile. They've been attacked by Babylon, right? And the prophets will cry out and they'll say, God, why have you forsaken us? Where have you left us? Why have you left us? What can we do to reconcile you to us? There is plenty of questions in the Bible. Lots of people that need God's presence and need answers and aren't finding it. And God welcomes that. And then he adds more to the story and says, I see your suffering and I feel it because I went down to the earth to suffer with you. But there's a resurrection coming, and that there's more to this story than simply the dark night. So they've started seeing hope within the darkest place in their own life. And they say, this is what the Bible's all about, how there is immense evil, and God will have judgment upon this evil. And he will redeem his people from their suffering. And even if these people lose their lives, it will be as a living sacrifice to the Lord, if they let it be. So, in a way, they become fearless, right? Because they're saying, regardless of what your move is, Nazis, we have a faith that is stronger than your narrative of fear, than what you're trying to pump in our heads about how you rule the world. Because actually, we know who rules the world, and it's not Hitler. And so their narrative, their Bible becomes essential in this chapter. The whole 15 pages you read is about how the Bible cannot be silenced, even in the darkest place in the world. Okay, we're going to keep our 15-page commitment. So you read to 210. You're going to read to page 225. That'll get you to the middle of the next chapter. This is not the end of the book, right? We're not just going to leave it here. There is more to this story, as we were saying. So please read your 15 pages. Please answer your daily question and keep up on your membing, our daily activities. We're coming to an end of this book quite soon, and then we will have one more project before the end of the school year. Man, it's been a pleasure reading this literature with you, and I'm so going to miss you all. All right, talk to you later.